From a past of glorious knockouts and Olympic gold to switch trainers and ignore veteran advice, these are the pros' predictions for the future of Anthony Joshua in the sport of boxing. When looking at the curious case of Anthony Joshua, the handsome, chiseled former champion who seemed to have the world in his palm, it's hard not to ask yourself, how did it come to this? Talk of retirement and the end of his career has been swirling around the former unified champion's name after his back-to-back losses to Alexander Usyk. So much so that a casual boxing fan might wonder why or how AJ was ever champ in the first place. But don't get it twisted. Anthony has had an illustrious career, setting records and racking up some impressive stats along the way. He began boxing quite late, at the age of 18, and as an amateur, Joshua amassed 40 wins with only 3 losses. In 2012, he represented Great Britain at the Olympics, bringing home a gold medal. And in 2013, he turned professional, ready to turn the heavyweight boxing division on its head. Out of his 28 professional fights, the 33-year-old Brit has won 25 of them, 22 by way of a brutal knockout. Between 2016 and 2021, he was the unified heavyweight champion of the world twice, holding the WA Super, IBO, IBF, and WBO titles. He's the second English boxer in history, after James DeGale, to win both gold at the Olympics and a world title by a major sanctioning body. In fact, he's the first British heavyweight to ever do so. He's been ranked by BoxRec among the world's top 10 heavyweights since 2014, and his knockout-to-win percentage stands at an astounding 88%. He can boast KO wins over the likes of Vladimir Klitschko and Dillian Whyte. And from 2015 to 2022, he fought exclusively in title bouts. Anthony Joshua has tasted the heights of glory in the boxing world, earning its most coveted position, that of the unified heavyweight champion. So how has the former champ gone from that to now talking of retirement and barely scraping a unanimous decision win over what should have been C-list competition? Well, going into 2019, Joshua was riding high on his undefeated record, with 22 professional wins under his belt against some of the toughest competition in boxing, and almost all of them being KOs. The champion seemed unbeatable and unstoppable. He was booked to fight Andy Ruiz, a Mexican boxer whose appearance was basically the complete opposite of Joshua. Maybe Anthony thought it would be an easy fight and underestimated his opponent. But whatever the reason, that night in June, Ruiz upset the world when he stripped Anthony of his titles via TKO in the 7th round. It was the first loss of AJ's career, and to someone he had likely expected to beat easily, and ever since then, we've seen a more tentative, a warier version of Joshua than we've ever seen before. It's true that he rematched with Ruiz in December of the same year, regaining his titles in a unanimous decision win. But AJ seemed so cautious and afraid of being knocked out that he almost refused to engage, cruising towards a victory that felt unsatisfying to the fans, especially compared to their first bout. In 2020, Joshua redeemed himself slightly, securing a KO win over Kubrat Pulev. But since then, the former champion has seemed to be on a downward trajectory, with his star falling fast. In 2021, Joshua lost his titles to Alexander Usyk, and when they rematched the following year, he once again fell short, losing via split decision. Fans could tell that this loss was different from either of his previous two, as Joshua proceeded to have a borderline meltdown post-fight, taking Usyk's belts and raising them to the crowd, leaving the ring just to come back, stealing Usyk's Ukrainian flag, and giving a victory speech for a fight that he had just lost. The bizarre moment will go down as one of the most embarrassing in boxing history, as the former champion appeared so upset by his defeat that he lost his cool and went completely off the rails. Many thought that was the end of Joshua, who seemed to be so accustomed to winning that his recent losses were breaking his spirit and potentially his mind. Since then, Anthony has made a comeback of sorts, securing a unanimous decision win over Jermaine Franklin in April 2023. But his so-so performance against what should have been a relatively easy opponent has led some to believe that Joshua can simply no longer compete at the highest levels. His promoter, Eddie Hearn, seems to think differently. In an interview with TalkSport's Simon Jordan ahead of the Franklin-Joshua bout, Hearn discussed AJ's future, outlining his plan of what 2023 might look like for the former champ. He said, I think he has 3 options: Deontay Wilder, Tyson Fury, and Dillian Whyte. I don't think there's any disgrace off the back of the Usyk fight going to Jermaine Franklin, Dillian Whyte, and then Tyson Fury or Deontay Wilder. That's a hell of a 2023. But judging off his actual performance against Franklin, it's hard to see how Joshua is expected to compete against those other names, so many levels above the rest. Joshua declared to the press prior to his bout with Franklin that if he lost, he would retire. But following his unanimous decision win, he seems to be more optimistic about the future, while also being aware that he didn't put on the best performance. In a post-fight interview, he said, "I'm going to keep on pushing and plugging away. Maybe I could have let my hands go more." It seems that even though he won, AJ's aware of the criticism his lackluster performance received. When asked who he'd like to fight next, he wasted no time calling out Tyson Fury, the Gypsy King. But if his Franklin bout is anything to go by, Joshua may be seriously unprepared for that fight. His former trainer, Robert Garcia, who he fired after his second defeat to Usyk, has commented on Joshua's future in boxing, saying, "AJ needs a change, a completely new change to what he is not used to." Garcia also hinted that Joshua's training camp for Usyk was too relaxed, and that he'll need to take his training more seriously ahead of major fights if he wants to secure victories. While Garcia doesn't seem to hold any ill will towards his former student, boxing icon Barry McGuigan doesn't seem too impressed with AJ's constant switching of trainers, saying, "The fact is, he's been around a few different trainers, and that automatically makes you think he's blaming the trainer for not performing. The bottom line is, it is with you. You are responsible for your performance." Robert Garcia has an unblemished record. He's incredible. He's produced many world champions and is a great coach. Barry believes that Joshua isn't taking his coach's advice and that he seems to be going through a crisis. But McGuigan isn't the only boxer who's had something to say about the former heavyweight champ. Floyd "Money" Mayweather himself commented on the Brit's performance following his second loss to Usyk, advising him to stick to one trainer, and mentioning how in a conversation the two had back when AJ was still undefeated, Floyd had offered to train Anthony, warning him that he had some weaknesses he needed to improve, and that if he didn't address them, one day he would come up short. It seems as if Joshua didn't heed this advice, and he's evidently paid the price with his recent losses and decline in performance. John Fury, Tyson Fury's father and trainer, gave his opinion on AJ in an appearance on Rob Moore's podcast, calling him an ambassador for the sport and a promoter's dream, but also saying that Joshua has lost the edge through the soft life. He does, however, believe that the former champion can come back and regain his titles as long as he surrounds himself with the right people who are willing to criticize him and regains his self-belief, which seems to have been shattered by his recent losses. Former cruiserweight champion and friend of Joshua, Tony Bellew, was sat ringside during his bout with Franklin, and he seemed optimistic about his friend's prospects, saying, "His confidence levels will rise. He'll be back and back stronger." With 2023 shaping up to be an instrumental year in the British former champion's career, it'll be exciting to see if Joshua can rise once again to the heights of glory despite his recent defeats. So, from a past of glorious knockouts and Olympic gold, to switching trainers and ignoring veteran advice, those were the pros' predictions for the future of Anthony Joshua in the sport of boxing.